Human family takes in baby Triceratops. What follows changes their lives. How will this beautiful story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. It was a cool autumn morning when the Johnson family's life changed forever. The sky was painted in soft hues of orange and pink as the sun began its ascent, casting a warm glow over their small farm on the outskirts of Cedar Valley. The farm had been in the family for generations, and for the Johnsons, Mark, his wife Sarah, and their two daughters, Emily and Clara, it was more than just a livelihood. It was their sanctuary. Mark was in the barn, tending to the chickens, when he heard the sound. It was unlike anything he'd ever heard before. A strange, high-pitched bleat that seemed to echo across the fields. He paused, his hands frozen mid-motion as he listened intently. The sound came again, louder this time, and his brow furrowed. It didn't sound like any animal he recognized. Curiosity piqued. He stepped out of the barn, squinting into the early morning light. The sound seemed to be coming from the field behind the house, near the edge of the woods. "Sarah," he called, his voice carrying through the crisp air. "Come out here. There's something strange." Sarah emerged from the house, her apron still tied around her waist. "What is it?" she asked, her tone laced with concern. "I'm not sure," Mark admitted, "but I think we should check it out." The family made their way to the field, the two girls trailing behind their parents. Emily, the eldest at 12, clutched a small flashlight despite the growing daylight, while Clara, just 6, held tightly to her mother's hand. Max, the family's loyal border collie, trotted alongside them, his ears perked and nose to the ground. As they neared the edge of the woods, the strange sound grew louder, almost insistent. Max barked once, his tail wagging with excitement, and darted ahead. "Max, wait," Sarah called, but the dog was already disappearing into the trees. The family followed, their steps quickening as they entered the shadowy woods. The sound was unmistakable now, a plaintive cry, almost like that of a distressed calf. But there was something about it that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. And then they saw it. In a small clearing, nestled among the fallen leaves, was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was small, no larger than a medium-sized dog, with a stocky body covered in rough, pebble-like skin. 3 horns jutted from its face, 2 above its eyes and a smaller one on its nose, and a frill adorned the back of its head like a crown. Its eyes, wide and frightened, glistened as it let out another mournful bleat. What is that?" Sarah whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark stepped closer, his movements slow and cautious. The creature flinched but didn't run, its small body trembling as it watched him with wary eyes. "It looks like," he trailed off, unable to find the words. Emily, always the inquisitive one, stepped forward, her face alight with wonder. "It's a baby dinosaur," she said, her voice filled with awe. "A Triceratops. I saw one just like it in my book." "That's impossible," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years." "Then how do you explain this?" Mark asked, gesturing to the creature. Clara, breaking free from her mother's grasp, knelt beside the baby Triceratops and reached out a tentative hand. "It's scared," she said softly. "Look at its eyes." To everyone's astonishment, the creature didn't shy away. Instead, it leaned into Clara's touch, letting out a soft coo as it nuzzled her hand. The sight was enough to melt even Sarah's initial skepticism. They couldn't just leave it there, alone and vulnerable. After a brief but heated discussion, the family decided to bring the creature back to the farm. Mark carried it carefully, its surprisingly warm body cradled in his arms. The little Triceratops seemed to relax in his hold, its eyes drooping as it let out a contented sigh. Back at the farm, they set up a makeshift pen in the barn, using hay bales to create a safe enclosure. Sarah brought out a bowl of water and some vegetables, unsure of what the creature would eat. To their relief, it eagerly munched on the carrots and lettuce, its small, beak-like mouth working quickly. Emily and Clara named it Spike, after the character from their favorite dinosaur cartoon. He's perfect, Clara declared, watching as Spike gnawed on a piece of lettuce. Can we keep him, please? Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance. They knew keeping Spike would be a monumental challenge, but they couldn't deny the bond their daughters had already formed with the little creature. We'll figure it out, Mark said finally, ruffling Clara's hair. But for now, let's focus on keeping him safe. Over the next few days, the family worked tirelessly to care for Spike. They researched everything they could about Triceratops, though reliable information was scarce given the obvious impossibility of the situation. They experimented with different foods, discovering that Spike had a particular fondness for sweet potatoes and dandelion greens. Spike quickly became a part of the family. He followed Clara around the yard, his stubby legs working hard to keep up with her. Emily took on the role of teacher, reading him books and showing him pictures of dinosaurs. "See, that's you," she said, pointing to an illustration of a fully grown Triceratops. Spike tilted his head, as if trying to understand. Despite the joy he brought, the family knew they couldn't keep Spike a secret forever. Rumors began to circulate in town about the strange creature spotted on the Johnsons' property. Curious neighbors dropped by unannounced, their questions thinly veiled as casual conversation. Mark and Sarah deflected as best they could, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. And then, one fateful morning, it did. The sound of tires crunching on gravel drew the family to the front porch, where they found two men in suits stepping out of a black SUV. They introduced themselves as representatives from a government agency, their expressions serious as they flashed their credentials. "We've received reports of a unique animal on your property," one of the men said, his tone measured. "We're here to investigate." Mark's heart sank. He knew this day would come, but he wasn't ready to let Spike go. "There's nothing unusual here," he said, his voice steady despite the anxiety churning in his gut. The men exchanged a glance before one of them spoke again. "Mr. Johnson, we're not here to cause trouble. We're here to ensure the safety of both your family and the creature." Mark and Sarah exchanged a tense glance, knowing they couldn't keep up the charade much longer. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. "We've been caring for an animal we found in the woods. But it's not dangerous, I can assure you." The men's expressions didn't change. "We'd like to see it," the taller one said, his tone leaving little room for negotiation. Reluctantly, the family led them to the barn. Emily and Clara trailed behind, their faces etched with worry. Inside, Spike was curled up in his pen, chewing contentedly on a pile of hay. When he saw the strangers, his head lifted, and he let out a soft bleat. The men froze, their professional demeanor faltering for a moment. "Is that a Triceratops?" the shorter man asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Mark nodded. "We think so. We found him alone in the woods. He was scared and starving. We couldn't just leave him." The taller man stepped closer, examining Spike with a mix of awe and caution. "This is unprecedented," he muttered. "A living dinosaur in the 21st century." Spike, oblivious to the tension, waddled over to Clara and nuzzled her leg. She crouched down to stroke his head, her small hand gentle against his rough skin. "He's not just a dinosaur," she said, her voice trembling. "He's family." The men exchanged a glance, their stern expressions softening slightly. "We understand that you've grown attached," the taller one said. "But this is a highly unusual situation. For the safety of your family and the public, we need to relocate the animal to a secure facility." "No!" Clara cried, clutching Spike tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at the men. "You can't take him. He needs us." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Spike isn't dangerous. He's just a baby. He trusts us and we take care of him. Please, don't take him away." The men hesitated, clearly moved by the girl's pleas. The shorter man crouched down to Clara's level, his voice gentle. "We're not trying to hurt him, sweetheart. We just want to make sure he's safe." "But he is safe," Clara insisted. "He's safe with us." Mark placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, his voice calm but firm. "If you take Spike, You'll be tearing him away from the only family he's ever known. We can work together to keep him safe, but he belongs here." After a long, tense discussion, the men finally relented. They agreed to allow Spike to stay with the family under strict conditions. They would conduct regular check-ins to ensure his health and safety, and the family would need to follow specific guidelines for his care. The relief was palpable. Clara hugged Spike tightly, her tears of fear replaced by tears of joy. Emily smiled through her own tears, her heart swelling with pride at her family's determination to protect Spike. The men left shortly after, leaving behind a packet of documents outlining the conditions of their agreement. As their SUV disappeared down the driveway, Mark turned to his family, his voice filled with determination. "We did it. We're keeping Spike." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustments. The family worked tirelessly to meet the government's requirements, building a larger enclosure for Spike and documenting every aspect of his care. They also installed cameras around the property, ensuring that Spike's presence remained a closely guarded secret. Spike, blissfully unaware of the challenges, continued to thrive. He grew rapidly, his once small frame becoming sturdier and more muscular with each passing day. His horns and frill, though still small, began to take on the distinctive shape of a Triceratops. Despite his size, he remained as gentle and playful as ever, chasing Max around the yard and nuzzling Clara whenever she sat down. One day, as Mark was reinforcing Spike's enclosure, Sarah approached with a worried look on her face. "We need to think about the future," she said quietly. "Spike won't stay small forever. What happens when he's too big for the farm?" Mark sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we'll figure it out. We always do." Emily, ever the problem solver, began researching Triceratops' behavior and habitats. She read every book she could find on dinosaurs, often staying up late into the night to take notes. "If we understand Spike's needs, we can plan ahead," she explained to her parents. "We need to be ready for anything." Clara, meanwhile, focused on making Spike feel loved. She painted a sign for his enclosure that read Spike's Place and decorated it with hand-drawn pictures of dinosaurs. She also spent hours playing with him, her laughter ringing through the air as they ran around the yard. Spike's bond with the family only deepened, and it became clear that he saw them as his herd. He followed them everywhere, his large eyes filled with trust and affection. Even the government officials who came for their check-ins couldn't help but be charmed by him. "He's remarkable," one of them admitted during a visit. "You're doing an incredible job." Despite the challenges, the Johnsons found joy in their unusual situation. Spike became a symbol of resilience and love, bringing the family closer together than ever before. Neighbors who once gossiped about the strange creature on their property now stopped by to admire him, their initial skepticism replaced with awe. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Clara looked up at her parents with a serious expression. "Do you think Spike knows how special he is?" she asked. Sarah smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "I think Spike knows he's loved," she said. "And that's what matters most." Mark nodded, his voice filled with pride. "He's part of our family, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep him happy and safe." As time went on, Spike continued to grow, both in size and personality. He was no longer the tiny, trembling creature the family had found in the woods. Now, he stood taller than Clara and weighed more than the family's tractor. Yet, despite his size, Spike remained as gentle as ever. His playful antics often brought laughter to the farm, whether it was chasing Max in the yard or trying and failing to hide behind hay bales during games of hide and seek. But with Spike's growth came new challenges. His increasing size meant he required more food, and his diet of vegetables and greens became harder to keep up with. Emily and Clara helped their parents plant an extra-large garden to ensure Spike had plenty to eat. But even that wasn't always enough. One afternoon, as Mark and Sarah stood in the barn discussing Spike's care, Sarah voiced a concern that had been weighing on her mind. "What happens when he's too big for the barn? Or the yard?" she asked, her voice heavy with worry. "We can't keep building bigger enclosures forever." Mark sighed, leaning against the barn wall. "I've been thinking about that too," he admitted. We might need to start looking for a larger property, or somewhere more remote. Spike's safety has to come first. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud crash outside. They rushed to the yard to find Spike standing next to the remains of the garden fence, a guilty look in his eyes. He had accidentally knocked it over while chasing Max, and the sight of his floppy ears and drooping tail was enough to soften even Sarah's frustration. "Spike," Clara scolded gently, running over to hug him. "You have to be more careful." The Triceratops nuzzled her, letting out a low, apologetic bleat. Emily, standing nearby, couldn't help but laugh. "He doesn't know his own strength," she said. "It's not his fault he's growing so fast." That night, the family gathered around the dining table to discuss their options. Emily brought out a map of the area, pointing to potential locations where Spike might have more space to roam. "There's a nature preserve about 30 miles from here," she said. "Maybe we could talk to the park rangers and see if there's a way to keep him there." Sarah frowned, her fingers tracing the edge of the map. "Wouldn't that draw too much attention? People would come from miles around if they knew there was a dinosaur living there." Mark nodded in agreement. "We'd have to keep it quiet. The last thing we want is for Spike to become some kind of spectacle." Clara, who had been quiet for most of the discussion, suddenly spoke up. "What if we ask the government people for help? They said they wanted to keep Spike safe too." The room fell silent as the family considered her suggestion. While they were hesitant to involve the officials any further, they couldn't deny that Clara had a point. If anyone had the resources to help Spike, it was them. The next day, Mark called the government representatives and explained the situation. To his surprise, they were more understanding than he had expected. "We've been monitoring Spike's growth," one of the men said over the phone, "and we anticipated this would become an issue. We might have a solution." A week later, the family was visited by the representatives, who presented their plan. A secure, secluded sanctuary where Spike could live freely without the risk of public exposure. The sanctuary was located in a remote valley, accessible only by helicopter, and it was designed to mimic the natural environment of prehistoric creatures. "It's not ideal," the taller man admitted during the visit. "We know how much Spike means to your family, but this might be the best option for his long-term well-being." The decision was agonizing. The thought of saying goodbye to Spike was unbearable, especially for Clara and Emily. "He's not just a dinosaur," Emily said tearfully. "He's our family." Mark and Sarah struggled with their own emotions, torn between their love for Spike and their responsibility to ensure his safety. "We need to do what's best for him," Sarah said quietly, "even if it's the hardest thing we've ever done." When the day came to move Spike to the sanctuary, the entire family was overcome with emotion. Clara clung to him, her tears soaking into his rough skin as she whispered, "I love you, Spike. Don't forget about us." Emily placed a hand on his frill, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "You're going to be okay," she said. "You'll have so much space to run and play. But we'll miss you every single day." Spike seemed to sense their sadness. He nuzzled each of them in turn, letting out soft, comforting coos. Even Max, who had been unusually quiet all morning, licked Spike's leg as if to say goodbye. The journey to the sanctuary was bittersweet. The family was allowed to accompany Spike for the final leg of the trip, flying with him in a specially designed cargo helicopter. As they soared over the remote valley, Clara pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. Below them stretched a vast expanse of lush greenery, dotted with winding rivers and towering cliffs. When they landed, Spike was led out of the helicopter and into the sanctuary. The sight of the sprawling valley seemed to fill him with excitement. He let out a joyful bellow and began to explore, his movements unrestrained for the first time since he'd come into their lives. The family watched from a distance, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that this was their final goodbye. Mark placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, his voice thick with emotion. "He's going to be happy here," he said, "and he'll always remember us." As they prepared to leave, the taller government representative approached them with a small device. "We've installed trackers throughout the sanctuary to monitor Spike's movements," he explained. "But this one is for you." It'll let you check in on him whenever you want. Clara held the device tightly, her tears finally giving way to a small smile. Thank you, she said softly. That means a lot. The helicopter ride back to the farm was quiet, each family member lost in their thoughts. When they arrived home, the absence of Spike was palpable. The yard felt empty without his presence, and the barn, once filled with the sounds of his playful antics, was eerily silent. But even in their sadness, the family found comfort in knowing they had done the right thing. Spike was safe, free to live as he was meant to, and they would always carry the memories of their time together. Weeks turned into months, and life on the farm slowly returned to its routine. But Spike was never far from their minds. Clara checked the tracker every evening, her face lighting up whenever she saw his familiar moving across the screen. He's by the river today, she'd announce. I think he likes it there. Emily continued her research on dinosaurs, inspired by her time with Spike to pursue a future in paleontology. One day, I'm going to learn everything there is to know about Triceratops, she told her parents. And it's all because of him. Mark and Sarah found solace in the knowledge that they had given Spike the best life possible. And though they missed him deeply, they knew that their decision had been the ultimate act of love. As the months turned into years, the Johnson family found a new rhythm, though the memories of Spike remained ever present. Clara, now a few years older, had taken it upon herself to keep Spike's memory alive in the home. She had crafted a scrapbook filled with photos, drawings, and little anecdotes about their time together. Every page was a testament to the joy and wonder Spike had brought into their lives. Remember when Spike tried to sit on the porch swing and broke it? Clara said one evening, flipping through the scrapbook. Her laughter was contagious, and soon the whole family was reminiscing. Emily leaned over to look at the page Clara had opened. Or the time he ate all the pumpkins from the garden just before Halloween, she added with a grin. Mark chuckled, the memory warming his heart. He always had a knack for finding trouble, he said, but he was worth every bit of it. Despite the smiles, there was still an undercurrent of longing. Though they knew Spike was thriving in the sanctuary, there were moments when his absence felt like a hollow ache. Clara, especially, struggled with the distance. Do you think he misses us? She asked one night as she stared at the tracker on her bedside table. Sarah sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I think Spike will always remember us, she said gently. You were his family, Clara, and family is never forgotten. The family's connection to Spike remains strong thanks to the tracker, which provided a window into his new life. Clara would often sit by the fireplace in the evenings, watching the small blinking dot as it moved across the screen. He's by the cliffs today, she would announce, or he's been near the river all afternoon. Emily, inspired by her bond with Spike, had started studying animal behavior, particularly focusing on prehistoric creatures and their modern-day descendants. She often shared her findings with the family, her enthusiasm sparking conversations about the mysteries of Spike's origins. There's still so much we don't know about how he ended up here, Emily said one evening as they sat around the kitchen table. But one thing's for sure, he wasn't just some random miracle. He found us for a reason. Mark nodded thoughtfully. And maybe, in some way, we were meant to find him too. One crisp autumn morning, as the family went about their usual chores, an unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman in hiking gear approached the farmhouse, her face lit with curiosity and excitement. Hi, she said, waving. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was told you're the family who raised the Triceratops. The Johnsons exchanged wary glances. Though they had grown accustomed to the occasional reporter or researcher showing interest in Spike, they were always cautious about who they allowed into their lives. The woman quickly noticed their hesitation and raised her hands in reassurance. I'm not here to intrude, she said. My name is Dr. Avery Hart. I'm a paleontologist, and I've been studying the sanctuary where Spike now lives. I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for him. Clara's eyes widened. You've seen Spike? She asked, her excitement bubbling over. How is he? Is he happy? Dr. Hart smiled warmly. He's thriving, she said. He's grown so much, and he seems perfectly at home in the sanctuary. But what's most incredible is how attached he still is to the memory of you all. The family invited Dr. Hart inside, eager to hear more about Spike's life in the sanctuary. Over cups of tea, she shared stories of his adventures, how he had befriended other animals in the sanctuary, his favorite spots to roam, and even his occasional antics that reminded her of his time on the farm. Spike has a unique bond with the rangers who care for him, Dr. Hart explained. But there's something about him that's different from the other creatures we've studied. It's as if he still carries a piece of this place with him. Clara beamed at the news, her heart swelling with pride. That's because we're his family, she said confidently, and he'll always be part of ours. Before leaving, Dr. Hart handed Clara a small envelope. This is for you, she said. I thought you might like to see how he's doing. Inside the envelope were several photographs of Spike, now fully grown. His horns were long and majestic, his frill vibrant and striking. Yet, despite his massive size, there was a gentleness in his eyes that was unmistakably the same. Clara held the photos close, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. This means everything. As the family adjusted to the bittersweet joy of seeing Spike's life from afar, new opportunities began to emerge. Emily, now in college, had started presenting on Spike's story at academic conferences, sharing insights about his behavior and the unique bond he had formed with their family. Her presentations drew attention from scientists and researchers alike, many of whom were eager to learn more about how the Johnsons had cared for such an extraordinary creature. Emily was careful to frame her talks not just as scientific studies, but as a testament to the power of love and connection. Spike wasn't just an animal, she would say. He was a reminder of what we're capable of when we open our hearts. Clara, inspired by her sister's work, began writing her own stories about Spike. Her vivid imagination brought their adventures to life on the page, and soon, her stories caught the attention of a local publisher. Within months, her first book, Spike, the Dinosaur Who Found a Family, was published, quickly becoming a bestseller in their small town. The book's success brought a new wave of attention to Spike's story, but the family remained steadfast in their commitment to protect his privacy. They turned down offers for TV appearances and interviews, choosing instead to focus on the legacy they were building in his name. Meanwhile, the sanctuary continued to thrive, thanks in part to the Johnsons' efforts to raise awareness and funds. The Spike Fund, established by the family, helped provide resources for other prehistoric creatures that had mysteriously surfaced in remote parts of the world. Though these occurrences were rare, each one served as a reminder of how unique Spike's story truly was. One evening, as the family sat together under the stars, Clara turned to her parents with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think there are more dinosaurs out there?" she asked. "Like Spike?" Mark smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Anything is possible," he said. "But even if there are, I don't think there's another one quite like him." Sarah nodded in agreement. Spike was special, and no matter what, he'll always have a piece of our hearts. As the years passed, the Johnsons found new ways to honor Spike's memory. The oak tree in the yard, where Spike used to nap, became a gathering place for family celebrations and quiet moments of reflection. Beneath its branches, they planted a small garden filled with Spike's favorite vegetables, a living tribute to the Triceratops who had changed their lives forever. Clara, now a young woman, often sat by the garden with a sketchbook in hand, drawing memories of Spike and imagining the adventures he might be having in the sanctuary. Though the distance between them was vast, she felt a deep sense of connection to him, knowing that their bond could never truly be broken. Emily, now a successful paleontologist, dedicated her career to studying the mysteries of prehistoric life. She often credited Spike as her greatest inspiration, sharing his story with students and colleagues who were captivated by the idea of a living dinosaur. And Mark and Sarah, though older, found comfort in the legacy they had built together. A legacy of love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that family could take many forms. One crisp autumn morning, Clara found herself drawn to the oak tree where they had planted the garden in Spike's honor. She knelt by the rows of dandelion greens and sweet potatoes, the very food Spike had loved most, and ran her fingers through the soil. Though years had passed since they had last seen him, her memories of Spike felt as vivid as ever. As she sat there, sketchbook in hand, Clara began drawing one of her favorite memories. Spike and Max chasing each other through the yard, their playful antics a source of endless joy. Her pencil moved across the page with ease, and for a moment, it was as though she could hear Spike's soft bleats and Max's excited barks. A voice behind her broke her concentration. "That's a beautiful drawing." Clara turned to see Emily standing there, her arms crossed and a warm smile on her face. "You've really captured him." Clara blushed, closing the sketchbook. "I just miss him," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like he's still here, you know?" Emily nodded, sitting down beside her. "I feel the same way," she said, "but I think that's a good thing. It means he's still a part of us." The sisters sat in companionable silence for a while, the autumn breeze rustling the leaves above them. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "Do you think we'll ever see him again? Like, really see him?" Emily hesitated, her scientific mind warring with her heart. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but if there's one thing Spike taught us, it's to never stop believing in the impossible." The family's connection to Spike deepened when they received an unexpected package in the mail. Inside was a letter from Dr. Hart, along with a small black and white video reel. The letter explained that the video showed footage of Spike in the sanctuary, captured by one of the hidden cameras placed there. Clara's excitement was palpable as Mark set up the old projector in the living room. The family gathered around, their anticipation growing as the first frames flickered onto the wall. The grainy footage showed Spike grazing peacefully near a river, his massive frill glinting in the sunlight. As the video played, they watched him interact with the other animals in the sanctuary: deer, birds, and even a small herd of wild horses. But what struck them most was Spike's behavior. Though he was free to roam the vast expanse of the sanctuary, he often returned to one particular spot, a cluster of trees near the edge of a cliff. He would lie there for hours, his head tilted as if he were watching something in the distance. "That's his thinking spot," Clara said with certainty. "He used to do the same thing here under the oak tree." Emily leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. "It's like he's waiting for something," she murmured. "Or someone." The video sparked a renewed sense of hope in the family. Clara, inspired by the footage, decided to write Spike a letter. It was a simple gesture, but one that allowed her to express all the emotions she had carried since they had said goodbye. "Dear Spike," she wrote in her neat, looping handwriting, "we miss you so much. The farm isn't the same without you, but we're so glad you're happy in the sanctuary. I hope you still think of us, because we think of you every day. You'll always be part of our family. Love, Clara." She placed the letter in an envelope, unsure of how to deliver it. "Can we send it to Dr. Hart?" she asked her parents. "Maybe she can get it to Spike." Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance, their hearts aching at Clara's earnestness. "We'll figure something out," Mark said gently, taking the envelope from her. Meanwhile, Emily's career as a paleontologist continued to flourish. She had become a leading voice in the study of prehistoric creatures, her work inspired by her experiences with Spike. At conferences and lectures, she often spoke about the unique bond her family had shared with him. Spike wasn't just a scientific anomaly, she told an audience during one particularly well-attended lecture. He was a living, breathing reminder of the connections we can forge with the natural world. He showed us that love and loyalty transcend species, and that even the most extraordinary creatures can find a home in our hearts. Her words resonated with the audience, many of whom approached her afterward to share their own stories of connection with animals. Emily listened intently, her belief in the importance of Spike's story only growing stronger. One day, after returning home from a lecture tour, Emily brought Clara a gift. It was a necklace, a small silver pendant shaped like a Triceratops. "For you," she said, placing it around her sister's neck, "so you can carry Spike with you wherever you go." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her sister tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll never take it off." As the years passed, the family continued to honor Spike's memory in their own ways. Clara, now a teenager, began volunteering at a local animal rescue, inspired by the bond she had shared with him. She quickly became known for her gentle touch and unwavering dedication, often saying, "If Spike could trust me, so can they." Emily, meanwhile, started a foundation in Spike's name, dedicated to funding research on prehistoric creatures and supporting sanctuaries like the one where Spike lived. The foundation quickly gained traction, attracting scientists, conservationists, and animal lovers from around the world. Through it all, the family never stopped checking the tracker. Though the dot on the screen was small, it was a constant source of comfort, a reminder that Spike was out there, living his life in the sanctuary. One evening, as the family sat on the porch watching the sunset, Clara spoke up. "Do you think Spike remembers us?" she asked, her voice tinged with both hope and uncertainty. Sarah reached over to take her hand. "Of course he does," she said. "Love like that doesn't just fade away." Mark nodded in agreement. "Spike will always be a part of us," he said, "and we'll always be a part of him." Emily, her gaze fixed on the horizon, added softly, "Maybe one day we'll see him again. But even if we don't, we'll always have the memories." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the family sat together, their hearts filled with gratitude for the incredible journey they had shared with Spike. Years passed, and life on the Johnson farm settled into a quiet but fulfilling routine. Clara grew into a compassionate and confident young woman, her time spent with Spike shaping her outlook on life and her connection to animals. Emily became a renowned paleontologist, known not only for her groundbreaking research but also for the heartfelt story of the Triceratops who had changed her family forever. Though their lives were busy, the family never let go of the bond they had shared with Spike. The tracker remained a fixture on Clara's nightstand, and every evening, she checked it religiously. Seeing the small blinking dot moving across the screen always brought her comfort. It was a reminder that, no matter how far apart they were, Spike was still out there, thriving in the sanctuary. But one fateful day, something unexpected happened. Clara turned on the tracker as usual, but instead of the familiar blinking, the screen displayed a message. "Signal lost." Her heart sank. "Mom! Dad!" she called, rushing into the living room with the tracker in hand. "Something's wrong. The tracker isn't working." Mark and Sarah exchanged concerned glances, while Emily, who had just returned from a conference, quickly examined the device. "It could just be a technical glitch," she said, trying to reassure her sister. "But we should contact Dr. Hart to make sure." Dr. Hart responded immediately, her tone calm but serious. "We noticed the same issue on our end," she explained over the phone. "The trackers in the sanctuary went offline during a recent storm. We're sending a team to check on everything and make sure the animals are safe." The family waited anxiously for updates, their worry growing with each passing day. When Dr. Hart finally called back, her voice held a mix of relief and urgency. "We've located most of the animals," she said, "but Spike isn't in his usual area. We think he might have wandered to the far side of the sanctuary, near the cliffs." Clara's stomach churned. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're doing everything we can to find him," Dr. Hart assured her. "The sanctuary is vast, but we have teams searching around the clock." Unable to sit idly by, the Johnsons decided to visit the sanctuary themselves. Dr. Hart arranged for their travel, and within a few days, the family found themselves flying over the sprawling valley where Spike had spent the past several years. As the helicopter descended, Clara pressed her face against the window, scanning the landscape for any sign of him. The sanctuary staff greeted them warmly but with somber expressions. "Spike is a smart and resilient animal," one of the rangers said. "We're confident he's still out there. But this place is massive, and it could take time to find him." Clara refused to lose hope. "We'll help look for him," she said firmly. "He's part of our family." The search was exhaustive. The family joined the rangers, trekking through dense forests, across rivers, and up steep hills in their quest to find Spike. Along the way, they encountered other animals living in the sanctuary: majestic deer, playful foxes, and even a herd of wild horses. But there was no sign of the Triceratops who had captured their hearts. As the sun began to set on the third day of searching, Clara spotted something in the distance. Near the edge of the cliffs, silhouetted against the fiery orange sky, stood a large, familiar shape. Her heart leapt. "It's him!" she shouted, breaking into a run. The rest of the family and the rangers followed, their footsteps quickening as they drew closer. Spike turned at the sound of their approach, his massive frill catching the last rays of sunlight. When his eyes met Clara's, he let out a deep, resonant bellow that echoed across the valley. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she reached Spike, throwing her arms around his sturdy neck. "I missed you so much," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Spike nuzzled her gently, his warm breath ruffling her hair. The rest of the family joined her, their relief palpable. Emily placed a hand on Spike's frill, her voice filled with wonder. "You've gotten so big," she said, "but you're still the same Spike." Mark and Sarah stood back, their eyes glistening as they watched their daughters reunite with the creature who had meant so much to them. "He never forgot us," Sarah said softly. Even after all this time, the rangers observed the scene with quiet amazement. "I've never seen anything like this," one of them said. "The bond he has with your family is extraordinary." Spike's return to the sanctuary's main area was a cause for celebration. The rangers ensured his enclosure was secure, and the Johnsons spent the next few days by his side, catching up on lost time. Clara fed him sweet potatoes and dandelion greens, while Emily sketched his now mature form with meticulous detail. As the family prepared to leave, Dr. Hart approached them with a proposal. "We've been working on a new initiative," she explained, "a way to create smaller, controlled sanctuaries where animals like Spike can live in closer proximity to the people who care for them. If you're interested, we could work together to establish one near your farm." Clara's eyes lit up. "You mean Spike could come home?" Dr. Hart smiled. "It would take time and resources, but yes, it's possible." The family threw themselves into the project, dedicating months to planning and fundraising. Emily used her platform as a paleontologist to rally support, while Clara wrote a second book about Spike's journey, with proceeds going toward the new sanctuary. The community rallied around them, eager to be part of something so unique and meaningful. When the sanctuary was finally complete, it was everything they had dreamed of. A sprawling, secure space filled with lush greenery, shaded areas, and plenty of room for Spike to roam. The day he was transported to his new home was a joyous one, marked by cheers and tears as he stepped out of the transport vehicle and into the enclosure. Spike adapted quickly to his new surroundings, his playful nature shining through as he explored every corner of the sanctuary. For the Johnsons, having him close again was nothing short of miraculous. Clara spent hours with him each day, reading him stories and sharing her latest sketches. Emily continued her research, often using Spike as a model for her studies. Mark and Sarah, meanwhile, found fulfillment in watching their daughters thrive, knowing that Spike had played a pivotal role in shaping their family's journey. "He brought us closer," Sarah said one evening as they watched Clara and Spike from the porch. "In more ways than we ever could have imagined." Mark nodded, his arm around her shoulders. "He's not just part of our story," he said. "He is our story." As the sun set over the sanctuary, casting the farm in a warm golden glow, Clara leaned against Spike's massive frill, her heart full. "You're home now," she whispered, "and you always will be." Spike let out a low, contented rumble, his large eyes reflecting the same sense of peace that Clara felt. For the Johnson family, life had come full circle. And though their journey had been filled with challenges, it had also been filled with love, growth, and the unshakable bond they shared with the extraordinary creature who had changed their lives forever.